Michelina Lewandowska was in the bathroom putting on makeup, getting ready to go shopping with her boyfriend. She was excited because their relationship was rocky, and he hadn't asked her to do anything with him in a long time. When she emerged from the bathroom ready to go, instead of an eager boyfriend, she found a peculiar one. He smiled strangely and said he had something to show her. But it was not a gift. It was a stun gun. She thought that her boyfriend and his best friend who was tagging along were playing a joke on her. But they were not. As she would soon find out, they had plans. But so did she. Welcome back to Crime A to Z, where we detail cases and criminals from their very beginning until well after other reporting ends. Today, we'll be talking about the case of Michelina Lewandowska. It's a case where the victim completely flipped the script and turned her attacker into the sufferer. It's the ultimate case of karma manifesting itself in the most beautiful way. And before we get started, if you like how we present this case, we'd really appreciate it if you can take a quick sec to hit like and subscribe. Let's go. Michelina Lewandowska was born in Poland to parents Jan and Miroslava Lewandowska. The couple had two other daughters, in addition to Michelina. In 2005, when Michelina was 21, she met 19-year-old Marcin Kasprzak. They met in a shop near her parents' home in Lasocin, a village in southwest Poland. The couple began dating, and within a year, Marcin proposed to Michelina. The couple moved from Poland to the UK in 2006 to find work and begin their new life together. In the UK, they moved into Marcin's parents' home in Fenade Bridge. The relationship had its ups and downs, but toward the end of 2007, Michelina was pregnant, and the couple welcomed his son in April of 2008. They named him Jakob. As the relationship continued to deteriorate, the couple called off the engagement. They still continued to live together, however, and Michelina held out hope that they'd work through their problems, particularly since they had a child. She continued to wear her engagement ring, never losing hope. But by 2011, it was clear to both Michelina and Marcin that there was no future for their relationship. Marcin didn't spend any time with Michelina, preferring to instead spend every day at the gym bodybuilding. Until one day. Marcin invited Michelina to take in some shopping with him and his friend, 18-year-old Patrick Boris. Given that Marcin had not wanted to spend any time with Michelina whatsoever recently, she was surprised, but pleased. She wondered whether this might be a turning point, suspecting that Marcin's feelings may be softening toward her. With their 3-year-old son, Jakob, staying with Marcin's mother that day, Michelina eagerly went to put her makeup on in the bathroom. She could faintly hear the men outside of the bathroom talking. When she emerged from the bathroom, she immediately encountered Marcin and Patrick, with what she called a chilling smile on their faces. Without time to process what was happening, Marcin told Michelina that he wanted to show her something. That something was a 300,000-volt stun gun. He pulled it out of his pocket and told her he was going to show her how it worked. Then he shoved it against her neck. The electric shock the taser sent through her body was massive and agonizing. Marcin threw her to the floor and continued tasing her. She screamed for him to stop, but he was too strong. As she was convulsing in pain, the 220-pound or 100-kilogram bodybuilder put his knee and entire body weight on her chest to keep her down. At some point, he paused long enough for her to ask him if he planned to kill her. He told her that he was just taking her somewhere and to not be scared. Marcin and Patrick then used packing tape to cover Michelina's mouth and bind her wrists and ankles. Once fully bound, they tased her again, then left her lying in the hallway for 6 hours. Michelina's mind raced. When the attack first began, she surmised that it may be some sort of cruel joke. But as she lay there barely conscious, it became clear what the two men's intentions were. She was determined to stay conscious, unsure of whether she'd ever wake up again if she did not. After nightfall arrived, the two men dragged a terrified Michelina into the kitchen. There they discussed using a plastic bag, and Michelina was certain they were going to use one to suffocate her. But they didn't. Instead, they stuffed the fully bound young woman into a cardboard box, then began tightly securing it with packing tape. Michelina was not going down without a fight, though. She tried to scream through the tape covering her mouth, but Marcin just laughed and told her as calmly as someone exchanging a pleasantry. "I've hated you for 4 years. You'll never see your son again." Michelina would later recall, "I will never forget the look on his face. He was incredibly calm, which was even more worrying." The attackers finished sealing the box, carried it to Patrick's trunk, and placed it inside. They then drove quite a distance from what Michelina could tell. It was a remote wooded area. The men removed the box from the trunk and dragged their heavy cargo along the ground, Michelina feeling every painful rock they passed over on her back. The pair had pre-dug a shallow grave. They placed the box inside, then used a shovel to dump soil on top of her. And for good measure, they also placed an 88-pound or 40-kilogram tree trunk on top of the box to ensure Michelina would never get out alive. From within her cardboard prison, Michelina could hear a shovel digging the dirt, then the dirt hitting the box. She strained to hear what they were saying. She thought to herself, "This is it. I'm going to die." Still in intense pain, with her cramped and contorted position making it even worse, Michelina began to worry about suffocating. So, she tried to calm herself and begin breathing as shallowly as possible. She laid still, listening for the sound of her attacker's car driving off. She didn't dare attempt to escape if they were still there, knowing they would kill her if she were somehow able to emerge. She thought of her son and knew she had to escape, for him. She refused to die and leave him motherless, and the thought of never seeing him again was too much to bear. So she waited and listened, but she didn't hear any sounds of a car leaving. So after it had been so long, she had to risk it. She thought surely they had to have left by now. It was time to strategize. She was helpless, in pain, contorted, bound and buried alive in a cardboard box. Then she suddenly realized that she actually had something that could help her. Ironically, it was the very thing that Marcin had given her to symbolize their love, her diamond engagement ring. She took it off and used the sharp edges of the diamond to first cut the tape around her wrists, and then her ankles. Then she put it back on and went for the cardboard. She just kept cutting and slashing at it with her ring until she could get her hand through a hole. Then she began frantically pulling and tearing where she made the hole, but the dirt just fell through it. It was all over her clothes, her hair, her face. Having also removed the tape on her mouth, she began screaming in hopes that someone would hear her and come save her. Receiving no response, she started kicking and clawing at the cardboard again. She was incredibly weak, but just kept trying. Then she somehow managed a hole large enough in the box to fit her head through. And she pushed up as hard as she could through the earth until her head emerged through the top. It was still dark, but she could see trees, leaves, and the sky. She was desperate for the fresh air and took in as much as she could. She was covered in dirt and exhausted, but there was still much to be done. As far as she could tell, she was in the middle of nowhere, and getting her head out was not going to be enough to save her in the darkness of night, with a variety of wildlife in the area. She was able to force her arms above the surface. That was the turning point for her. Once she achieved that, she knew she would make it. After having been buried alive for nearly an hour, Michelina freed the rest of her body. Then, fully exhausted, she staggered from the woods onto the road. She saw a car approaching and flagged it down. Thankfully, the driver stopped and was helpful. He called the police, who arrived within 15 minutes. She shared her harrowing story with them, then took them back to where she'd emerged from her cardboard coffin. Police promptly located and arrested Marcin. They brought him in on suspicion of kidnapping and attempted murder. Marcin did not deny the attack, but claimed that he was not trying to kill Michelina. He told them he merely intended to scare her and was going to return to retrieve her. But they couldn't buy it, particularly since they quickly discovered that after burying Michelina, Marcin and Patrick used her ATM card to withdraw £500, then returned home to play video games. By the time the investigation and subsequent trial were complete, they learned the true story. 25-year-old Marcin was an avid bodybuilder and had developed an addiction to anabolic steroids. That addiction often caused him to experience fits of rage. And once he learned that Michelina decided to leave him and return to Poland with their son, he decided to dispose of Michelina and raise Jakub, along with the help of his own mother. He concluded that the two of them could do a better job than Michelina. They learned that Marcin told Michelina that she was not as attractive as the women he saw at the gym. and that he had changed his Facebook status to single, hoping to start a relationship with another woman. Then, when he put his murder plan into action, he was disappointed because the stun gun didn't perform as advertised. He expected it to paralyze Michelina. In court, Michelina, who spoke Polish, described her experience through an interpreter. "He was putting the soil on top of me. I wanted to reply. I wanted to put my 2 fingers through the hole, but I was afraid if he could see it, he may break my fingers with the shovel." She continued, "I thought about my ring, that I could take it off my finger and try to cut through the tape with it." She described how she could hear music from a nearby pub, so she knew she couldn't be too far from civilization. Marcin's defense then tried to argue the same thing Marcin told police, that he did not intend to kill her, but was only trying to scare her. He noted how the box the men placed Michelina in had 2 handholes, through which she could breathe. To that, Michelina replied, "I can tell you now that they," referring to the handholes, "were not left specially or intentionally for me to live." The prosecution showed photos of the box in which Michelina was imprisoned and the trail of clothing leading from a hole at one end of the box. They described how police had to remove dirt to reveal parts of the box below. In January of 2020, Marcin Kasprzak was convicted of attempted murder and kidnapping and sentenced to 20 years in prison. Patrick Boris was found not guilty of attempted murder, but was found guilty of kidnapping and sentenced to 4.5 years. Both men were required to serve at least half of their sentences before they would be eligible for parole. But that half-sentence requirement won't matter for Marcin. Once he was arrested, investigators searched the home of his parents where he, Michelina, and their son were living. There they found equipment and supplies for making explosives. Marcin pleaded guilty to 8 counts of illegal possession of explosive substances and was sentenced to 4 years in prison for each count. 32 years in total to be added on to his 20-year sentence for attempted murder. Michelina was relocated to a secret location far away from where the attempted murder took place. However, she still lives in fear of him. After the verdict, she issued statements, including, "He buried me alive and walked away thinking I would die there cold and alone in that terrible box. He wished for my death and planned to kill me in the most horrifying way imaginable. But I didn't allow him to succeed. Using the last shreds of my strength, I fought my way out of that grave. Now it is he who is imprisoned." After the verdict, Michelina's father shared his feelings about the verdict and Marcin. He said that he knew Marcin was trouble from the moment he met him. He added, "I always knew something wasn't right about Marcin right from the start. We didn't make eye contact. He was spoiled and overprotected, maybe because he's an only child and a mummy's boy. His mother kept him cooped up in a cage like a chicken all his life, so when he went out into the world, he didn't really know what to do." Michelina's mother, Miroslava, also shared, "I am so happy by the verdict because for me, it means peace at last. I was waking up at night, having nightmares in which I saw Marcin's face. He was haunting me like a ghost." We loved the poetic justice of this case. Marcin felt he had the right to take away someone else's freedom and life because he wanted to. And in the end, it was his own freedom that was taken away. And were it not for the additional crimes he was convicted of, he would be free far too soon. But whatever, just so long as he remains unfree for as long as possible. What are your thoughts about this case and Michelina's bravery and clear thinking under what had to have been the most terrifying ordeal of a lifetime? Please do share them in the comments below. And if you like how we presented this case, we'd really appreciate you hitting like and definitely hit subscribe so you never miss a single video.